Right now, decision time upon us with a vote on Syria looming. Can the president sell Syria to Congress and an expectant American public? And next, upside down and inside out. That is how New York's Chief Justice describes New York State's bail system. Our special exclusive report, Bail or Jail, sheds light on how the system is anything but fair for those on the bottom end of the rung. And later, the race for City Hall. On the eve of New York City's mayoral primary, it has all come down to a battle of the bills. We're going to have our interviews this afternoon with both Democratic frontrunner and the man who hopes to capture those precious undecided voters. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us this Monday evening, September 9th. Quite a bit to cover over the next 60 minutes, including our special report, Bail or Jail, for getting fairness. Did you know that many of the people being held in New York jails for now, and I'm not talking about violent offenses, they're only there because they couldn't make just a few $100 of bail, and that's why they're behind bars. We're going to show you how the system is not only broken, but also it needs to be done about it. That's during tonight's special report. But first, we turn to Syria. Could we actually have a deal to avoid a military strike on that Middle Eastern nation? Well, the Obama administration says it will consider, and I'm putting that word in quotes here, a new proposal that Syrian chemical weapons be put under UN control and then be destroyed. But in the meantime, the Obama administration continues to prep for a military strike. The Obama administration's argument for a military strike on Syria boils down to two key points.
Assad's escalating use of chemical weapons threatens the national security of the United States. Failing to respond means more and more Syrians will die.
But today, a curveball from Russia. The foreign minister there said that they will push Syria to put its chemical weapons under international control and then destroy them. The White House called this a potential avenue.
We want to look hard at what the Russians have proposed, and we will.
But administration officials caution they have no confidence that Assad would ever turn over weapons. Syria's foreign minister said they welcome the Russian proposal out of concern for the lives of the Syrian people. The 11th hour diplomatic surprise may have stemmed from an off-the-cuff suggestion from Secretary of State John Kerry today in London.
He could turn over every single bit of his chemical weapons to the international community in the next week. Turn it over, all of it, without delay.
After he said that, the State Department insisted it was just a rhetorical argument. But now it looks like it's gaining momentum. But the Obama administration continues to prepare for a military strike, and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad remains defiant. He sat down with CBS This Morning's Charlie Rose in Damascus over the weekend.
Will there be attacks against American bases in the Middle East if there's an airstrike?
You should expect everything. You should expect everything.
Now, here in the U.S., opposition to a strike on Syria, it's growing. A new ABC News Washington Post poll found that nearly two-thirds of the American public is against it. And trust me, when you look at the numbers in Washington in both the House and the Senate, support is wavering at best. And for more, we're joined now by former Congressman Brad Miller. Congressman Miller served for a decade in the U.S. House and 8 years in the North Carolina legislature. And during his time in Congress, he served on the Foreign Affairs Committee, now a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. He's kind enough to join us now. Congressman, thanks for a few minutes. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, a seemingly off-the-cuff remark, or if we think it was more planned, etc., no matter what, it seems there's momentum building here for this Russian proposal. Do you think there's merit to it? Because people close to Assad say, this guy's a congenital liar. There's no way they'd turn him all over, and there's no way there'd be transparency. What do you think?
You know, I've seen the headlines, and I've heard just very briefly on television news of the proposal. I think a proposal that could avoid military intervention by the United States would be welcome. There is obviously the problem of how to verify it, but it is far preferable to put an end to the possible use of chemical weapons against the Syrian people that way than through military action.
You're there, obviously, closer to it than me, Congressman. A lot of your former colleagues They were home for 5 weeks and they got an earful from their constituents, but they'll also see, as you used to see, some of the briefing reports, a horrific video of these victims, many of them women and children, and they see and understand some of the potential consequences not only action brings, but also inaction here. How much of an undecided factor is there, you think, for some former colleagues, or do you think at this point, regardless of what the president says tomorrow, they've made up their minds?
You know, I thought a week ago a lot of members had wet fingers in the air, but I think they now know exactly which way the wind is blowing. They've heard it from their constituents. They've seen the polling, and I think it will be very difficult to get the votes to pass the resolution.
Now, let's talk about what it means, because you obviously saw confidential briefings here and the conversations about two steps, 3 steps before, and that's what I hear from a lot of makers. They say, all right, even if I'm for the strikes, I don't know what happens next. You hear from administration officials that say there's also consequences that are going to be heard by every Gaddafi, every terrorist outfit out there. They'll read not only weakness, but they'll also read this as a credibility issue if the U.S., after threatening strikes, doesn't deliver on them. Use Iran as the best example. In Tehran, they look at this and say, hey, why should we trust the U.S. and the threats going forward? And why wouldn't Israel conversely say, how do we know the U.S. is going to be there when we need them? God forbid the nuclear program keeps developing right across our borders. Talk about the cost of inaction here if the president doesn't follow through.
Well, I think this debate has gone very badly. It's gone very badly for the Obama administration. It's gone very badly for our interest in the world for many of the reasons that you have just given. But I think the questions that many members of Congress are asking and members and Americans are asking, what will be the effect of the strike? Will it change the course of the war in some way? Will it make life better for the Syrian people? Those questions have not yet really been answered, and I think American people are skeptical, and we've obviously had recent bad experiences with military entanglements in that part of the world, and it's very difficult to move the American people at this point.
Now, you don't have to read between the lines here. If you had to cast a vote tonight, it would be a no vote, Congressman, is that right?
Based on the unanswered questions that I have about the effect of the strike, it appears to be predominantly a sectarian civil war. We've not done well in the past when we've wandered into civil wars we haven't really understood. And it's very hard to see that any happy outcome will happen. There will be any happy outcome for the Syrian people. We're going to be very lucky if Syria is not Yemen or Somalia in 5 years. But based upon those unanswered questions, I don't support it. I very much respect the Obama administration's concern for the Syrian people and their revulsion at the atrocities committed by the Assad regime. I very much wish the world was organized in a way that humanity could step in when a regime is that brutal to their own people. But that appears not to be where we are now.
There are consequences beyond the immediate. We thought we were going to be talking when they got back. They only had 9 working days to figure out some of the looming deadlines financial facing this country here and avoid doing some of the maniacal stuff of going over yet again cliffs. But what are the consequences for this administration? First of all, you call a vote, you should know how it ends. They obviously didn't do enough of a good head count here before they did it. That said, the president's got 3.5 years. In what ways could this neuter his presidency going forward if he doesn't get the vote after, he basically doubled down here and said he's going to go to Congress because he wants to take action against Syria?
I think House Republicans are going to be against the Obama administration, against President Obama personally, almost regardless of what he proposes. So I'm not sure it matters a lot. The loss of support among Democrats is probably reparable. Is probably on this issue, but I think most Democrats will stick with the Obama administration in the future on other issues. But I don't know if you've noticed, but Congress was already pretty dysfunctional. I don't see anything improving that with or without this vote.
I kind of picked up on that, Congressman. It has been a rough 5 years here.
It's hard to miss.
Tell the truth. Is this a vote you're glad you're not going to have to cast?
Oh, I was happy to be there to be part of the nation's big decisions. So I would, if I were there, I would buckle down and make the decision.
Congressman Miller, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And again, a reminder, everyone, tomorrow evening, the president will address the nation at 9 o'clock. We'll have that, of course, in its entirety, and we'll also be bringing you into our conversation, the immediate aftermath of the president's address, right after 9 o'clock, when he tries to convince a skeptical, not only Congress, but American public, this is the action we need to take as a nation. Okay. We take a quick break here, and when we come back, we switch gears to an issue much closer to home. We bring you our special report, Bail or Jail for Getting Fairness. Are the scales of justice tipped against the poor in this country? Those with financial means often freed from jail immediately, while those without are locked up a whole lot longer, even if their crimes are of the lesser variety. Up next, how one teen held on a simple parole violation never left Rikers Island alive for lack of a few $100. Also, an exclusive interview with New York's Chief Justice Jonathan Lippman, a rare conversation for New York's Chief Judge. We're going to hear his controversial comments on the issue. That's when we come back with Bail or Jail right here on RFL.